and whoever the lightning strikes, that is the next bishop. And I think it would certainly produce a more interesting outcome than the Crown Appointments Commission have managed to do. But our religious context is one of essentially disconnected, locally evolved religions. And that is what we have now. Some local religions have been more successful than others in expanding, and we should all admire the imagination, the humanity of many of these religious perspectives. They speak to us about our own capacity for imagining, for visioning, for becoming. And I would imagine that's why we are all here today. But we now live not in a village, but in a global village. All of us live in England, but with each passing day, the last line of the universal address, which of course says planet Earth, is the context for the future resonance and relevance of faith. So to finalize, the religious present is one of essentially disconnected, distrusting, locally evolved religions, which despite the genuine efforts of many of the leaders of those faiths, the genuine efforts of everyone here today, see themselves as competitive rather than complementary. And also, I don't think we should underestimate that within a market economy, religions are not immune to market forces. And I read with interest the other day that between 4 and 6 new Protestant churches are opening every week in China. And it could be argued that Christian Protestantism is one of a handful of religions that can work with a dynamic, emergent, capitalist view of organizing society. Many of the nature-based religions are not able to offer the same spiritual underpinning to that world view, which was why many of the localized, indigenous, tribal faiths have been decimated by the combination of the monotheistic religions and capitalism. But as we look to the future, it is becoming clearer, day by day, that the potent combination for growth is also leading us towards unparalleled catastrophe. The idea of saving your spiritual self whilst actively taking part in the extinction of other life forms and the decimation of the very earth that sustains us is nothing other than ridiculously misguided and spiritually bankrupt. I'd like to read a little bit about where we are now. And this is from a wonderful writer called Joanna Macy. And the title of the beginning of this piece is The Global Crisis and the Arising of the Ecological Self. A remarkable development is occurring in our time. It emerges in counter-response to the monoculture created by the globalizing forces of the industrial growth society. What is emerging is an experience and understanding of the psyche that's very different from what is promoted and required by the forces of industrial capitalism. And it represents an epochal shift in the sense of self. By self, I mean that metaphoric construct of identity and agency, that hypothetical piece of turf on which we construct our strategies for survival, the notion around which we focus our instincts for self-preservation, our needs for self-approval, and the boundaries of our self-interest. Something is shifting here. The conventional notion of the self to which we have all been conditioned by mainstream culture is now beginning to be undermined. To appreciate how significant this arising is, let's look at how this self is construed by mainstream society and the forces of industrial growth systems. It is construed and experienced, first of all, as separate. And a lot of the religions, a lot of the world religions, encourage us to see ourselves as separate from other world religions. It is the Cartesian observing eye viewing objectively from without. It is the mind that can and should manage the physical world. As such, it is the crown of creation. It is preferably aloof and immune to what it does to other life forms. Secondly, being separate, it is also experienced as threatened by the brokenness and suffering of this world and needs to be able to escape. It imagines such escape in terms of transcendence from imperfection to perfection, impure to pure, from darkness to light, from agitation to serenity. So the world itself is often seen as a trap from which to extricate oneself. Do the religions that we happen to believe in not promote that worldview? Or as a battlefield on which the forces of good and evil contend, and where the natural world has no role to play except as a backdrop to one's moral struggles? Thirdly, this self that we are urged to experience by our current political economy is so needy of material comforts and material accoutrements of success that these must be secured at any cost. These costs include ongoing resource wars, the poverty and permanent indebtedness of less favoured countries, and the destruction of the beauty and integrity of the natural world. The Catholic theologian, wonderful, the late Catholic theologian Thomas Berry, writes, "The industrial context in which we presently function cannot be changed significantly in the immediate future. Our immediate survival is bound up in this context, with all its beneficial as well as its destructive aspects. What is needed, however, is a comprehensive change in the control and the direction of the energies available to us. Most of all, we need to alter our commitment from an industrial wonder world achieved by plundering processes to an integral earth community based on mutually enhancing human-earth relationship. This move from an anthropocentric, human-centered sense of reality and value to a biocentric norm is essential for our survival."